The night it all happened, the rain over New Jersey fell like needles against the windows, each drop tapping the glass as if warning the house about the storm rising inside. Emily Carter stood at the top of the staircase, her swollen belly tightening under her loose sweater, her arms wrapped around her 7-month-old son, Noah, who whimpered softly from the thunder rumbling above. She whispered soothing words, but her voice trembled because she could already sense the familiar tension crawling through the walls. Lucas had just come home. Lucas Miller slammed the front door with enough force to shake the picture frames. His shoes dragged across the hardwood floor as he moved into the living room, muttering ugly words under his breath. Emily could smell the cold Manhattan rain on his coat, mixed with the faint floral perfume that never belonged to her. She tightened her hold on Noah. He tightened his jaw at the sight of them. He didn't greet her. He didn't ask about the baby. He didn't ask about Noah's fever earlier that afternoon. He only reached into his pocket, set his iPhone on the table, and rubbed his forehead like she had ruined his entire life just by standing there. Emily managed a soft question. "You're home late again. Is everything okay?" But Lucas spun toward her, as if the words were knives. "What do you think, Emily?" His voice cut through the dim light. "You sitting here doing nothing while I drown out there?" She stepped down one stair, careful with Noah's weight. "I've been taking care of the baby all day. I'm doing my best." "Your best?" he snapped. "Your best is being a burden. Your best is making me look pathetic." The baby began crying, startled by the harsh echo in the hall. Emily rocked him gently, whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart," though her legs trembled. She could see something different in Lucas tonight, something sharp, reckless, fueled by whatever poison Vanessa had whispered into his ear. He had left the house angry before, but tonight felt like standing on thin ice above freezing water. "Emily," Lucas growled, taking a step toward the stairs. "I'm sick of pretending. I'm sick of this entire mess." She backed up one step, clutching Noah against her chest. "Lucas, please, let's just talk when you calm down." But her words only fed the fire. The thunder outside cracked loudly, making Noah wail harder. Emily's heart pounded. She could feel the wooden edge of the step beneath her heel. She tried to steady herself, tried to shield the baby, tried to keep peace for one more night. But Lucas charged forward, eyes glassy with a fury she had never seen so clearly before. "Stop looking at me like I'm a monster," he shouted. "I'm not. I'm just trying to protect our son." "Our son?" he roared, stepping closer. "You can't even protect yourself." Emily felt the air shift. She saw his arm move. She felt the pressure of his hand pushing forward, pushing fast, pushing hard. And then, her foot slipped, her body tilted. Noah screamed. Emily reached, twisted, clutched him with every ounce of strength left in her mother's heart. The staircase vanished beneath her. The world flipped. And the last thing she saw before her head struck the wooden step was Lucas's face, cold, shocked, and yet somehow satisfied, as if this was the moment Vanessa had convinced him he needed. Emily's body hit the floor with a sickening thud, and something far darker than the storm outside began to unfold. Emily Carter was the kind of woman people in her New Jersey neighborhood described as quiet but kind. The sort of mother who remembered every doctor's appointment, every feeding schedule, every tiny detail that made her baby feel safe. At 28, she carried a softness in her voice that made others instinctively trust her. But behind that softness lived years of exhaustion, an exhaustion she hid from the world far better than she hid it from herself. Before marriage, she had worked as a junior accountant in a small Manhattan firm, steady and focused, waking early to catch the train with her coffee in hand. She had dreams, once simple ones, like starting her own bookkeeping service or saving enough to travel with her parents to the Grand Canyon. But life shifted the moment she married Lucas Miller. At first, their home in the New Jersey suburbs felt like a promise. The white kitchen cabinets, the soft gray couch, the little balcony where she imagined drinking morning tea, everything seemed to whisper that the future would be gentle. And when Noah was born, she believed that motherhood would heal all the cracks that had begun forming in her marriage. Her son was her entire world. She memorized the curve of his eyebrows, the warmth of his tiny fingers, the way he looked up at her as if she were the only safe place he knew. But behind closed doors, Emily lived inside a cage that didn't look like one from the outside. Lucas controlled the bank cards. He managed every bill. He told her it was easier that way, that mothers didn't need to worry about money, that her job was to raise the children and be grateful. At first, she believed him. Then she learned to fear him. He didn't hit her every day. He didn't scream every day. That was the thing. His cruelty came and went like storms she couldn't predict. A slammed door here, a cold silence there, accusations that she wasn't doing enough, wasn't trying enough, wasn't enough. Some nights he would come home smelling like an unfamiliar perfume, tossing his tie onto the floor, saying he had important meetings. She asked once, gently, and he responded with a rage so sharp she learned to swallow her questions whole. Still, Emily stayed. She stayed because of Noah. She stayed because she was pregnant again. She stayed because she had no family nearby, no income of her own, no safe place to run. And she stayed because Lucas always found a way to apologize at the right moment, to lower his voice and say, "You know I'm just stressed. Don't make things harder." She wanted to believe him. She needed to. Every morning, she paced the living room with Noah on her hip, humming soft lullabies passed down from her mother. She tried to keep peace in the house by staying quiet, by being gentle, by never raising her voice. When Lucas was in a good mood, she felt hopeful. When he wasn't, she felt like she was living beside a live wire. But even in the darkness, she never stopped loving her children. That love was the force that kept her moving, that kept her whispering promises to Noah while rocking him to sleep. "Mommy will keep you safe. Mommy will find a way." She didn't know it yet, but the night she fell when her body struck the hardwood floor and Noah's cry echoed through the hall, that was the night her life would be forced to change forever. The night the world pushed her to a crossroads she had been too afraid to face. And somewhere, buried deep under her bruises and fear, the first sparks of strength began to flicker awake, as if whispering, "This isn't the end, Emily. This is the beginning." The house where everything happened sat quietly on a tree-lined street in suburban New Jersey, the kind of neighborhood where the lawns were trimmed, the driveways were wide, and the neighbors waved politely without ever truly knowing one another. From the outside, Emily and Lucas's home looked peaceful, a two-story beige house with a white porch railing and a small garden. Emily once tried to keep alive before morning sickness and exhaustion made her abandon it. People driving past would never imagine the tension that lived inside its walls. They'd never guess it was a house where silence felt like a warning and footsteps on the stairs could make a pregnant woman freeze. Inside, the living room held a gray sectional couch that Emily picked because it reminded her of calm mornings. On the coffee table sat a stack of baby books, a half-finished bottle of formula, and a small plush giraffe Noah carried everywhere. The chandelier above the dining table cast soft gold light across the hardwood floor light that often masked the shadows she lived with. The staircase, the very one she fell from, curled downward in a gentle arc, its polished wooden banister gleaming in the evenings when the street lamps outside turned on. Emily used to love that staircase, especially during Christmas when she wrapped garlands around it. Now, she couldn't look at it without a chill crawling up her spine. Their kitchen, bright with white cabinets and stainless steel appliances, once symbolized the future she hoped to build: family meals, laughter, conversations about school and birthdays. But over time, it became the room where Lucas's temper simmered. The clatter of plates, the slamming of cabinet doors, the sharp sighs whenever Noah cried, each sound etched deeper into her memory. Emily tried to balance it by lighting candles, by playing soft music from her old iPhone, by cooking meals she hoped would soften Lucas's mood. But no scent, no recipe, no melody could quiet the resentment that grew in him. Beyond the house, Manhattan loomed just 40 minutes away, a glittering skyline that once inspired Emily. Before Noah was born, she used to ride the train into the city, passing the busy streets, the yellow cabs, the cafe windows glowing with early morning life. She loved the energy of it, the feeling that she was part of something bigger. But after marriage, Lucas insisted she quit working. "There's no point in you commuting," he said. "Your place is at home." And slowly, the city that once felt like freedom became a distant memory she watched through the lens of other people's lives on social media. Still, Emily kept small reminders of hope around the house, a photo from her days at the Manhattan office, a framed picture of her parents visiting from Texas, a little ceramic bowl she made in college. They were quiet pieces of herself she refused to let the marriage erase. Even the nursery upstairs reflected her heart. A soft blue wall, a wooden crib, a night lamp shaped like a moon, casting a gentle glow during the late-night feedings. It was the only place where she could breathe freely. But the heart of the setting, the emotional ground where everything shifted, was the hospital in New York, where she woke after the fall. The white walls, the steady beeping of machines, the sharp, sterile smell, they became the backdrop of the moment she realized life would never return to the way it was. It was where she met Dr. Grace Hill. It was where her son lay with his tiny arm wrapped in a cast. It was where the truth of her marriage finally surfaced. And it was where Emily began to understand that the world outside that New Jersey house was bigger than her fear. She didn't know it then, but the hospital would be the place where her new life started, far from the staircase that nearly ended everything, and closer to the future she secretly prayed for each night. Lucas Miller had once been the kind of man people called promising. At 32, he worked in a Manhattan financial firm where ambition was praised more than integrity. Colleagues admired his sharp suits, his quick calculations, and the way he could charm clients over late-night drinks in midtown lounges. But beneath his polished exterior lived a man hollowed out by pride, insecurity, and a hunger for validation that no job title could satisfy. When he met Vanessa Cole, confident, striking, always dressed in sleek black, those empty spaces inside him found someone eager to feed them. Vanessa worked in the same building, 2 floors above Lucas. She wasn't just beautiful. She was strategic. She knew exactly how to read a man's weakness, and Lucas's weakness was simple. He wanted to feel superior. Vanessa made him believe he deserved more than a tired wife at home. She made him feel chosen, admired, worshipped even. The attention wrapped around him like a warm coat, and soon, Lucas began craving it the way some people crave air. He started staying late at work, telling Emily he had deadlines. In truth, he sat in the soft leather booth of a Manhattan rooftop bar, sipping bourbon while Vanessa ran her fingers along his wrist and whispered, "You'd already be partner if you didn't have so much baggage weighing you down." At first, he laughed it off, but as weeks passed, the words burrowed deeper. Baggage. That was how Vanessa described Emily and their children. Lucas never defended his wife. He simply drank the compliments Vanessa poured into him like high-priced whiskey. Soon, Emily's phone calls asking when he would come home annoyed him. Noah's crying irritated him. The sight of Emily's pregnancy, something that once filled him with pride, now represented another responsibility tying him down. Vanessa knew exactly what she was doing. Each time Lucas complained about money or stress, she smiled with calculated sympathy. "You could have such a different life," she would say. "A life that actually fits you." But the most dangerous moment came the night Vanessa leaned close and whispered, "Your wife is ruining your chances. Everyone at the firm knows it. They can tell when a man is trapped." The word trapped ignited something ugly inside Lucas. He began coming home angry, slamming cabinets, kicking toys, criticizing Emily's cooking, her clothes, her exhaustion. No matter what she did, he painted her as the obstacle standing between him and the life Vanessa promised. Emily tried to reason with him, but Lucas wasn't listening anymore. He was listening to a fantasy built on manipulation and flattery. Weeks before the fall, Lucas's cruelty shifted. The insults sharpened. The nights out grew longer. Emily once found a gold bracelet in the back seat of his car, something elegant and expensive, nothing she had ever owned. But when she asked about it, Lucas grabbed her wrist and growled, "Don't start. You ruin everything when you start." Then came the night Vanessa suggested the unthinkable. She didn't say it directly. She didn't have to. She simply said, "If something happened, people would believe it was an accident. She's clumsy. She's overwhelmed. Everyone knows new moms are unstable." Those 6 sentences planted the seed, and Lucas let it grow. By the time he stepped into the house on the night of the fall, soaked from Manhattan rain and dizzy with Vanessa's poison, he wasn't the man Emily married. He wasn't even a man who understood consequences. He was a man desperate to free himself from the life he blamed Emily for, when, all along, he was the one destroying it. He didn't see his pregnant wife. He didn't see a mother holding their child. He saw only a barrier he believed he had the power to eliminate. And that belief was what turned him into the monster Emily never wanted to see. The chaos that followed the fall spread through the house like wildfire. The moment Emily's body hit the bottom of the stairs, the sound echoed sharp, sickening, unforgettable. Noah's cry pierced the air, trembling and terrified, the kind of cry that only comes from real pain. For a split second, even Lucas froze. His breath caught, his eyes widened, and for the first time that night, the mask of confidence cracked. He'd never expected the reality of what he'd done to look so horrifying. But the shock lasted only seconds before panic shoved itself into his chest. Without thinking, Lucas rushed down the stairs, not to help, but to assess the damage. His hands shook as he touched Emily's shoulder, but her body lay limp, her breathing shallow. Noah's tiny arm bent in a way no child's arm should. The sight made Lucas curse under his breath, stumbling backward like he was the victim. For one fleeting moment, he whispered, "What did I do?" But then a darker thought replaced the guilt. "I need to fix this before anyone finds out." He snatched his iPhone off the table and dialed 911, forcing his voice into a trembling imitation of a distraught husband. "My wife, she fell down the stairs. Please, hurry." His tone cracked in all the right places, rehearsed without ever meaning to rehearse it. While waiting for the ambulance, he ran to the front door, flung it open, and paced on the porch like the perfect picture of panic. But the neighbors across the street saw everything differently. Mr. Walter, the elderly veteran who lived directly opposite, had heard shouting before the fall. He'd seen Lucas's shadow move fast, aggressive, nothing like the version Lucas was performing now. The flashing red and blue lights of the ambulance painted the quiet neighborhood in chaotic colors. EMTs rushed into the house. One knelt beside Emily, checking her pulse. Another gently lifted Noah from her arms, cradling his tiny cast-forming limb. When they asked what happened, Lucas repeated his story with too much certainty. "She slipped. She's pregnant. She's exhausted. She just lost her balance." But EMTs had seen enough real accidents to recognize when something didn't match. The angle of the fall, the bruises not related to the staircase, the force implied by the injuries. Nothing added up. Neighbors gathered on sidewalks in small clusters, murmuring, watching as Emily was placed on a stretcher. One woman whispered, "That poor girl. She never looks okay." Another shook her head, saying, "I heard them arguing earlier." The unspoken truth hung heavily in the air. Everyone had noticed the tension long before tonight. As the EMTs loaded Emily into the ambulance, Noah's cries echoed through the cold night. Lucas climbed in after them, clutching the side rails as if trying to maintain control of the situation, but the paramedic shot him a wary look, one that said he didn't entirely buy the story. At the hospital, things unraveled further. When Lucas tried to approach the nurse's station for information, his agitation drew attention. He raised his voice, insisting they let him into the exam room, insisting they tell him what was happening. A nurse quietly notified security because something about his behavior felt off, too defensive, too frantic, too rehearsed. Meanwhile, inside the trauma room, Dr. Grace Hill examined Emily with practiced care. The contusions, the swelling, the panic still trapped in her muscles even while unconscious, it all pointed toward violence, not clumsiness. Grace discreetly marked possible domestic abuse in Emily's chart. Lucas didn't know that yet. He stood in the hallway, knuckles white around his phone, pacing like a caged animal. Texts from Vanessa buzzed on the screen. "Did you handle it? Is it finally done? You'll thank me later." Lucas turned the phone face down on the chair, terrified someone would glance at the notifications. More nurses walked by, whispering. Security eyed him closely. The neighbors' murmurs, the EMT's suspicion, the doctor's notes, it all began weaving a truth Lucas could no longer bury. And then came the moment he feared most. Dr. Grace stepped into the hall and said firmly, "Mr. Miller, we need to talk about your wife's injuries." The hours after the fall drifted through Emily's mind like a fog she couldn't outrun. When she finally opened her eyes in the dim hospital recovery room, everything felt heavy, her chest, her limbs, even her thoughts. The ceiling lights blurred into pale halos, and for a moment she didn't know where she was or why her body ached as though she had been struck by a car. Then the memory slammed into her. The stairs, Noah's scream, Lucas's face twisted with anger. Her heart thudded painfully, and she tried to sit up, but a sharp sting in her abdomen forced her back down. A soft whimper sounded nearby. Emily turned her head and saw Noah in a small hospital bassinet, his tiny arm wrapped in a cast, his cheek bruised. The sight gutted her. She reached toward him with trembling fingers, whispering, "Mommy's here. I'm right here." Though her voice cracked halfway through the sentence, she had taken the fall, absorbed the hit, twisted her body to protect him, but seeing him hurt felt like a wound far deeper than anything on her skin. Dr. Grace Hill entered quietly, carrying a chart. Her expression softened when she saw Emily awake. "You're lucky to be conscious," she said gently. "You and the baby both survived a very dangerous fall." She checked the monitor beside the bed. "We were close to emergency surgery. You lost a lot of blood, and we're watching your pregnancy carefully." Emily nodded, but tears slipped down her temples. She didn't feel lucky. She felt broken, split open by fear, guilt, and a truth she had buried for too long. Grace rested a hand on her shoulder. "Emily," she said softly, "your injuries don't look accidental. You don't have to tell me anything now, but I'll listen when you're ready." Before Emily could answer, the door swung open. Lucas stormed inside, his voice louder than the room could hold. "Finally," he barked, marching to the bedside. "Do you have any idea what you put us through? You scared me half to death." His tone shook with anger, not concern. Noah flinched in his bassinet. Emily recoiled instinctively. She whispered, "Please, lower your voice." Her fingers curled protectively toward Noah. Even though she could barely lift her arm, Grace stepped between them like a shield. "Mr. Miller, your wife needs calm right now. I'm going to ask you to step out." "I'm not leaving," Lucas snapped. "She's my wife." "She's my patient," Grace countered, firm and unafraid. "And she's in no condition for confrontation." Something in Lucas's eyes flashed a warning Emily had learned to recognize. Her pulse spiked. Her breathing hitched. The room felt too small, too bright, too charged. Grace saw it all. She gently guided Lucas toward the door, saying, "We'll talk when she's stable." Once he was gone, Emily's body crumpled as though someone had cut the last thread holding her upright. She covered her face with shaking hands, and for the first time since the fall, she sobbed not from physical pain, but from the terror of realizing she and her children were no longer safe. Her tears soaked through the hospital blanket, hot and relentless, as if every silent night she'd endured was spilling out at once. Grace closed the door, sat beside her, and let her cry. "Emily," she said quietly, "you don't have to keep pretending. You and your children deserve safety." Emily whispered through the sobs, "I don't know how to leave him." Grace held her hand. "You don't have to know everything. You just have to survive this moment. We'll help you with the rest." Emily exhaled a shaky breath. Something inside her, small, fragile, but alive, shifted. The collapse wasn't just emotional. It was the moment the lies she'd lived under began to crumble, because beneath all the fear, a seed of defiance began to grow. Emily woke again later that night, not from pain, but from the sound of hushed voices outside her room. The hallway lights seeped under the door, stretching long shadows across the floor. She could hear a firm, steady tone, Dr. Grace, and a lower, tense voice she recognized instantly. Lucas. Even when whispered, his anger carried a sharp edge. "She's confused," Lucas insisted. "She fell. She's always been clumsy. I've told you that." Grace didn't flinch. "Her injuries are inconsistent with a simple fall. You don't know my wife. I know trauma when I see it." Silence followed, thick and humming with tension. Then Lucas muttered something too low to hear, and footsteps faded down the hall. When Grace entered the room, her expression was calm, but her eyes held a spark of determination Emily hadn't noticed before. "I need to show you something," she said. She slid a small USB drive from her pocket and held it in her palm. "This was delivered anonymously by someone from your neighborhood." She hesitated, then added, "He didn't feel safe giving it directly to you." Emily's heartbeat stumbled. "What is it?" Grace went to the corner table where a small hospital laptop Saturday. She plugged in the device and clicked open a file labeled with the date of the fall. A security camera video appeared grainy, slightly angled but unmistakably focused on her staircase at home. Emily's breath froze as the footage rolled. There she was, holding Noah. There was Lucas, standing at the bottom of the stairs, shouting something she couldn't hear but remembered in her bones. Then he moved fast, aggressive, the same movement she felt before the world went black. The video didn't perfectly capture the impact, but it showed enough. It showed intent. It showed anger. It showed a man lunging toward his pregnant wife. Emily covered her mouth, her body trembling. "I knew it," she whispered, voice cracking. "I knew he meant to." The words broke apart. Grace touched her arm. "This changes everything. This is evidence." Emily couldn't look away from the screen. For months she had doubted herself, questioned her memories, convinced herself she was overreacting or misremembering. Lucas had told her so many times that she was emotional, confused, dramatic. But here, on a small laptop in a cold hospital room, was proof, unfiltered, undeniable. "He can't hide this," Emily whispered. Grace nodded. "Not anymore." "But there's more." She paused, gauging Emily's strength before continuing. "You weren't the only one he hurt." Emily's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "The ambulance report noted something about your son's injuries. The torque on his arm didn't come solely from the fall. Someone grabbed him hard before the impact." Emily's face drained of color. He grabbed Noah?" "It's likely," Grace said gently. "I'm sorry." The room tilted. Emily gripped the sheets, gasping for air. It was one thing to accept that Lucas hurt her, another to realize he had hurt their baby. The betrayal carved deeper than any bruise or bloodstain. A mother's fear transformed into something fiercer, something protective and burning hot. Almost as if summoned by her rising anger, her phone buzzed on the side table. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. "He's not who you think he is. Don't go back." Emily stared at the message, heart thundering. "Who sent this?" Grace shook her head. "I have no idea. It came in just now." For the first time since the fall, Emily felt something she hadn't dared feel. Power. Not much, just a flicker, but it was there. A small flame built from truth, evidence, and the knowledge that she had not imagined any of it. She wasn't losing her mind. She was finally regaining it. Grace placed a folder on the bed. "Inside this is the number of a lawyer. Someone who understands cases like yours. Someone who can protect you." Emily traced her fingers over the folder, absorbing the weight of the moment. The world she had known, fearful, suffocating, controlled, began to crack. And through that crack, the truth shone like a blade. This wasn't just a fall. It was the beginning of Lucas's downfall. Emily did not change in one night. There was no dramatic switch, no sudden burst of confidence. Her transformation began in small, trembling steps, steps that felt shaky at first but grew steadier with every breath she took without Lucas hovering over her. Lying in the hospital bed, she touched the folder Grace had given her, the one containing the lawyer's information. The name, Daniel Brooks, was written neatly at the top. She didn't know him yet, but the fact that someone existed who could stand beside her in a world she'd always faced alone gave her a quiet sense of strength. When Lucas finally left the hospital for the night, muttering about work and cleaning up this mess, Emily exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. The silence he left behind wasn't oppressive, it was liberating. She watched Noah sleeping peacefully beside her, his little cast resting on a pillow. Her unborn baby shifted gently in her belly, reminding her she wasn't alone. She had 2 lives depending on her. And maybe, finally, she was ready to protect them. The next morning, Daniel arrived. He stepped into the room with calm energy, no intimidation, no judgment, just a patient kindness that felt foreign to Emily. His dark hair was slightly tousled, his suit simple but sharp, and he carried a notebook instead of the usual stack of legal files. He pulled up a chair and sat beside her, offering a small, reassuring smile. "Emily," he said softly, I'm here because someone believes you deserve safety, and I agree. Emily swallowed hard. I'm scared. Of him? Daniel asked gently. Of leaving, she whispered. Of what he'll do. Of how I'll take care of the kids. Of everything. Daniel nodded slowly. Fear is common in situations like this. But fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're aware. And awareness is your advantage. She looked at him, eyes glossy. How do I even start? He placed a printed sheet on her lap. With a plan. A safe, lawful, structured plan. One that Lucas has no control over. Emily read the bullet points. Shelter location. Temporary custody. Restraining order. Emergency financial support. Medical documentation. Police reporting timeline. Her hands trembled as she held the paper. I'm really doing this, she murmured. Yes, Daniel said. You are. The first step was her appearance. Emily had spent months shrinking herself, wearing oversized clothes to avoid arguments, keeping her hair tied back so Lucas couldn't say she was trying too hard, avoiding makeup because he claimed it looked desperate. But now Grace brought her a small toiletry bag from the hospital's support program. Inside was a hairbrush, a gentle face cream, and a tinted lip balm. Simple things, but powerful in the hands of a woman reclaiming herself. Emily brushed her hair slowly, carefully, as if reminding herself she was a person, not an object to be criticized. She looked in the mirror on the hospital tray table and barely recognized the woman staring back. Tired eyes, fading bruises, swollen belly, but beneath all of that, something steady, something awakening, Daniel noticed. You're stronger than you think, he said. Later, a social worker arrived with clothes donated by a local charity, a soft sweater, maternity jeans, and a warm coat. Emily slipped into them, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in years, a warmth that came from dignity, not fear. By afternoon, arrangements were complete. A secure shelter in Brooklyn had a room ready. A police escort would transport her and Noah directly once she was discharged. Lucas had no idea. When he came back that evening, expecting to control the situation, he found Emily sitting upright, her posture straighter, her eyes clearer. She met his gaze without shaking. What's with the attitude? He snapped. Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. For the first time, Lucas saw something in her he couldn't break resolve. She wasn't the same woman he pushed down the stairs. She was the woman who would bring his world crashing down. The day Emily left the hospital wasn't quiet. It wasn't hidden, and it wasn't anything Lucas expected. She had spent years shrinking herself to avoid his rage, walking on eggshells, bending her spirit just to keep peace. But this time, she didn't leave like a shadow slipping out of her own life. She left like a storm finally breaking free. The police escort arrived at 9:15 a.m. 2 officers, a marked cruiser, and a social worker carrying paperwork that would make Lucas furious. Emily held Noah close, his tiny cast resting gently against her chest, while another officer wheeled her discharge bag down the hall. Her belly felt heavy, but her steps felt light. It was the first time in a long time she was walking towards safety instead of away from danger. Lucas, however, arrived moments too late. He stormed through the hospital lobby in a fitted coat, hair slicked back, eyes wild with the kind of entitlement that assumed everyone should bend for him. When he saw the officers escorting Emily toward the exit, his face drained, then darkened like a thunderstorm forming mid-sky. "What is this?" he barked, marching toward them. "Where are you taking my family?" Officer Ramirez stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, please keep your distance. Your wife is leaving under protected transport." "Protected?" Lucas laughed sharply. "From me? You're kidding." Emily turned slowly, intentionally. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. She simply met his eyes. The calmness in her expression rattled him more than any scream ever could. "You think you can just walk away?" he hissed. Officer Ramirez held up a document. "There is an emergency protective order filed against you. You are legally barred from contacting her or the children." Lucas snatched the paper, scanning it with disbelief. "This is ridiculous. She's emotional. She doesn't know what she's doing." But Emily spoke softly, firmly. "I know exactly what I'm doing." Those 7 words hit Lucas harder than the police presence. His jaw twitched. Emily, don't start. You're just confused. Another officer, Officer Lee, interjected. Sir, step back, now. Lucas tried once more, reaching toward Noah. Give me my son. Emily hugged Noah closer. No. The firmness in her voice wasn't loud, but it stopped him cold. It was a voice Lucas had never heard from her before, steady, rooted, unafraid. A small crowd gathered behind them in the lobby: patients, nurses, hospital staff, people who had seen Emily's bruises, people who had seen Lucas pacing the waiting room like an irritated man checking stock prices rather than someone worried about his family. And among them stood Dr. Seven Reshade, Grace, arms folded, watching everything unfold with a protective intensity. Lucas, feeling eyes on him, tried to switch personas again, the concerned husband act he had performed so well for so long. He softened his voice, held out a hand, even forced a tremble in his tone. Emily, sweetheart, don't do this. We can fix everything. Just come home. But Emily shook her head. There is no home with you. His smile cracked. Rage seeped through the cracks. This is because of that doctor, isn't it? And that lawyer. They're filling your head with— No one had to fill my head, she interrupted, her voice steady. You showed me who you are. Silence rippled across the lobby like a current. Lucas lunged forward, but the officers reacted instantly, hands on their holsters, voices sharp. That's enough, Mr. Miller. He stopped inches away, shaking, breathing hard, humiliated in front of strangers who could now see the truth he'd tried so hard to hide. Emily moved past him, each step deliberate. She didn't look back. Outside, the cold air hit her cheeks as the officers guided her into the cruiser. As the door closed, she watched Lucas through the glass, standing on the sidewalk, swallowed by his own fury, powerless for the first time. The car pulled away. Emily held Noah, her hand resting over her belly. For the first time in years, she allowed her shoulders to relax. She wasn't running anymore. She was taking back everything he tried to steal from her. The morning sun over Brooklyn carried a different kind of warmth, one that felt earned, not borrowed. Emily stood by the window of her small but peaceful studio apartment, holding a cup of warm tea between her hands. The city below hummed with distant traffic, the kind of sound that once reminded her of the life she left behind. Now, it reminded her of the life she'd rebuilt slowly, painfully, but beautifully. Noah crawled on the soft rug behind her, giggling as he tapped his little cast against a stack of toy blocks. His bruises were fading, his arm healing, and every babble he made felt like a tiny victory. Emily's unborn daughter shifted gently inside her, a constant reminder that even after storms, new beginnings still arrived. These quiet moments, light coming through the curtains, the sound of her son's laughter, her baby's kicks, were the pieces of peace she once thought she would never earn. After leaving the hospital, the next months became a blur of paperwork, hearings, and constant reassurances from Daniel and Dr. Grace. There were nights when fear returned, when nightmares of the staircase woke her in cold sweats, but every time she faltered, someone reached out a hand, Grace checking on her pregnancy, the women at the shelter offering support, Daniel showing up with groceries or simple words like, "You're not alone in this." Slowly, Emily learned to breathe without fear. The day Lucas finally faced court, she sat in the front row beside Daniel. Lucas was escorted in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, wrists cuffed. He scanned the room, and when he saw her, anger flared, but then it flickered into something pathetic and small. He looked nothing like the man who once towered over her. This Lucas seemed hollow, defeated, stripped of the illusions Vanessa had fed him. When the judge read the charges, felony assault, child endangerment, attempted harm of a pregnant woman, Lucas's jaw locked, but he didn't look at her again. His sentence would be years behind bars. His career was gone, his reputation ruined, his finances drained. Vanessa had disappeared long before, leaving him to rot in the wreckage she helped create. As the officers led him away, Emily didn't feel triumph. She felt release, a weight sliding off her shoulders, a door finally closing for good. After the trial, life didn't magically become perfect, but it became hers. Daniel helped her secure stable housing and navigate the maze of legal documents that once terrified her. He never pushed, never demanded anything from her. He simply showed up carrying diapers, bringing warm meals, offering a steady presence she had never known from a man. One crisp afternoon, when autumn leaves drifted across the park, Emily watched Daniel push Noah's stroller while playfully naming shapes he saw in the clouds. She felt something warm bloom in her chest, not dependence, not fear, but hope. He glanced back at her. "You okay?" She nodded. I think I'm finally getting there." He smiled, the kind that crinkled his eyes. "You're stronger than you believe." Weeks later, after giving birth to her daughter, whom she named Lily, Emily stood in her living room, holding the newborn against her chest. Noah sat beside her, babbling happily, and Daniel quietly cleaned dishes in the kitchen, humming off-key. And in that ordinary, imperfect, beautiful moment, Emily realized something. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was living. She kissed Lily's forehead, inhaling her newborn sweetness. "We're safe now," she whispered. "We finally made it." When Daniel walked over, offering to hold the baby so she could rest, Emily looked at him not out of need, but out of trust. Her past hadn't defined her. Her pain hadn't broken her. Her fear hadn't swallowed her. She had walked through a nightmare and stepped out the other side carrying 2 children, her dignity restored and her future wide open. And for the first time in her life, she believed fully, deeply, unshakably. No woman is born to suffer. Every woman is born to rise. The first weeks after Lily's birth were softer than anything Emily had known in years. Nights were long, but they were no longer terrifying. She woke not to shouting or slammed doors, but to the gentle cries of a newborn and the steady breath of Noah sleeping beside her. Her body ached. Her mind was still unwinding from years of fear, but the apartment felt like a sanctuary, a place where peace lived instead of danger. Still, healing didn't happen all at once. It came in waves. Some mornings, she stood at the kitchen counter, warming a bottle for Lily, when a sudden memory of Lucas's footsteps would grip her chest. The sound had once signaled danger, and her body had learned to tense before she even realized it. Now, there were no footsteps, only quiet, only sunlight, but her muscles still remembered. Trauma had a way of echoing long after the storm passed. Daniel understood without her saying a word. He never pushed her to talk about her nights with Lucas, never asked for details. Instead, he showed up with quiet gestures, a fresh pack of diapers left by the door, a warm latte from the coffee shop downstairs, a new box of crayons for Noah. He didn't try to fix her. He simply stayed, anchoring her to the present whenever her mind drifted back into the darkness. One afternoon, while Lily napped in her bassinet, Emily sat on the couch folding tiny baby clothes. The soft cotton onesies smelled of lavender detergent, and something about the simple rhythm soothed her. Noah toddled around with his little cast now removed, his steps wobbling but determined. Every so often, he would run up to her, hold out a toy, and say, "Mama," as if checking that she was still there. "I'm right here, baby," Emily whispered each time, and she meant it. Later that week, a counselor from the shelter arrived for a scheduled visit. Her name was Marcy, a woman with warm eyes and gray curls who carried herself like someone who had seen too many stories like Emily's and still believed in better endings. They sat at the small table by the window, sunlight warming their faces. "How have you been sleeping?" Marcy asked. Emily hesitated. "Some nights I still dream about the stairs, about falling." "That's normal," Marcy said gently. "Your mind is releasing what it held on to for too long." Emily nodded. "Sometimes I feel guilty that I didn't leave sooner." Marcy leaned forward. "Emily, every survivor thinks that at some point. But you left when you were able to, and you protected your children. That's what matters." Emily's eyes softened. She had heard similar words before, but this time she believed them a little more. Later that evening, when Daniel stopped by with groceries, he found her sitting on the floor, playing with Noah's building blocks. Lily slept in her portable bassinet, a tiny fist resting near her cheek. The apartment glowed with warm lamplight. "You look happier today," Daniel said as he set a bag on the counter. "Do I?" she asked, almost surprised. "Yeah," he replied with a gentle smile. "You do." Emily glanced at her children, at the softness in the room, at the absence of fear. "I just had a good talk today," she said. It made me realize how far we've come. Daniel sat beside her, close enough to offer comfort but far enough not to crowd her. You deserve good days, he said quietly, and you're going to have more of them. For a moment, Emily let her head rest lightly against the wall. She breathed slowly, deeply, something she hadn't done freely in years. Healing wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't announce itself with fireworks or grand declarations. It came in silence, in safety, in moments like this, small but profound. And as she watched Noah stack another block, his laughter filling the room, Emily realized something powerful. Her life was no longer about surviving Lucas. It was about building a future worth living for. Emily had never imagined she would one day rebuild her entire life from the ground up, but that was exactly what the following months required of her. Healing emotionally was one thing, but healing financially, reclaiming independence after years of being controlled, was a different battle. A quieter one, but just as important. The first step came unexpectedly, one crisp morning in February. Daniel arrived at her apartment holding a stack of forms and a shy smile. I have good news, he said, setting everything gently on the table. We got approval. Emily blinked. Approval for what? Financial assistance for survivors. He tapped the paperwork. This will help cover your rent for the next few months while you recover from childbirth. Plus, there's temporary income support. It's not a fortune, but it's a start. For a moment, Emily simply stared at the pages. She had spent years with Lucas mocking her expenses, telling her she would be nothing without him, that she could never survive financially on her own. Seeing her name on official documents, her name, not his, stirred something deep inside her chest. Pride, relief, ownership. She breathed out slowly. I didn't think I'd ever see something like this. Daniel shrugged softly. You deserve stability. You deserve a chance. The next step was returning to work gently at first. Emily contacted her old employer in Manhattan, the one she had left when Lucas insisted she stay home. She expected rejection. She expected to be forgotten. But the email she received in return surprised her. We remember you well, Emily. You were one of our most meticulous junior accountants. We'd be glad to offer you part-time remote work until you're ready for more. She read the message twice, then a third time, her vision blurring with tears. When she forwarded it to Daniel, he responded almost instantly. I knew they'd see your value. You're exactly who they'd want back. So she began working again, first 10 hours a week, then 15. Her laptop sat on the kitchen table beside a mug of peppermint tea as she balanced spreadsheets while rocking Lily's bassinet with her foot. Noah played with his toys beside her, occasionally climbing into her lap to rest his head against her shoulder. These weren't glamorous workdays, but they were filled with purpose. They reminded her she was capable, intelligent, and independent. But financial rebirth wasn't the only transformation happening. Emotionally, Emily was learning something new every day. She learned how to sit in silence without fear. She learned how to hold her children without worrying a door would slam behind her. She learned how laughter sounded when it wasn't followed by an argument. She learned how to trust that peace wasn't a trap. And slowly, very slowly, she learned how to let someone new into her circle. Daniel visited often, but never imposed. Some days he came with breakfast sandwiches and asked about her workload. Other days he stopped by to fix a loose cabinet hinge or carry laundry up the stairs. He played with Noah, holding him upside down until the little boy giggled uncontrollably. He held Lily with a gentleness that made Emily's throat tighten. One evening, after a long workday, Emily found herself sitting beside him on the couch while Lily slept on his chest. Noah lay curled beside her, thumb in mouth, eyelids drooping. You've done so much for us, she said softly. Daniel shook his head. You're the one doing the work. I'm just here. You're here, she repeated, her voice warming around the words. That used to be what I feared most, someone being here. And now it's what makes me feel safe. Daniel didn't rush to respond. He simply looked at her with a tenderness she had never received from Lucas. Whenever you're ready to move forward, he said quietly, I'll walk with you, not ahead of you, not behind you, with you. Emily felt something open in her chest. Not fear, not doubt, something hopeful, something reborn. That night, After Daniel left and the apartment was quiet, Emily looked around her tiny living room, the toys scattered on the floor, the baby blanket on the couch, the laptop resting on the table, and realized something profound. She had built this life with her own hands, and no one would ever take it from her again. The shift in Emily's life had been steady but quiet, like the slow blooming of a flower after a long winter. But beneath this growing peace, a storm was gathering. Daniel had warned her that the investigation into Lucas wasn't over, that more evidence might surface. Still, Emily tried not to think about it. She focused on Lily's soft breathing, on Noah's laughter, on learning to live again without fear. But one Tuesday afternoon, while Noah napped and Lily dozed on Emily's chest, the past knocked on her door literally. A gentle tapping echoed through the apartment. 3 quick knocks. Emily's heart kicked in her chest, but when she peered through the peephole, relief washed over her. Dr. Grace Hill stood in the hallway, holding a sealed manila envelope. Emily opened the door, smiling faintly. "Grace? Is everything okay?" Grace stepped inside, looking both relieved and troubled. "Everything's fine, but something came to my office today. Something you need to see." Emily's stomach tightened. Grace placed the envelope on the kitchen table. This was delivered anonymously, no return address. She paused. "But the contents are serious." Emily swallowed hard and opened it. Inside were printed screenshots, blurred but readable, of text exchanges between Lucas and Vanessa. The timestamps matched the night of the fall. She read the first message aloud, her voice trembling. "She's in the way. I'm done dealing with her." Then Vanessa's reply. "You want freedom? Then act like it. The stairs are right there." Emily's breath caught. Her vision spun. It felt like the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. She flipped to the next page, hands shaking violently. "Lucas, I can't do this. She's pregnant." Vanessa. "Exactly. Pregnant and dragging you down. Handle it before the baby ties you forever. It'll look like an accident." Emily slapped a hand over her mouth. A choked sound escaped her somewhere between a sob and a gasp. Grace moved closer. "There's more." The next page contained a still photo, grainy security footage from Lucas's office garage. Vanessa standing close to him, her hand gripping his collar. The timestamp was just an hour before he pushed Emily. Emily whispered, "They planned it." Grace nodded. "This is premeditation, and it's damning." Emily shook her head, tears burning her eyes. He wasn't just angry. He meant to. She couldn't finish. Lily stirred against her chest, and Emily instinctively held her tighter. Grace gently touched her arm. "Emily, this evidence changes the case entirely. It's no longer just domestic assault. It's attempted homicide and attempted harm of a minor." Emily stared blankly at the documents, her mind spiraling. "Who sent this?" "We don't know," Grace said softly, "but someone close to them wanted the truth out." Emily sank into a chair, her legs trembling. "I can't believe he actually..." For months, she had survived on the fragile hope that maybe Lucas lost control, that he didn't truly intend to hurt her and Noah. It didn't excuse anything, but the thought had softened the blow. This erased all of it. Lucas didn't just snap. He planned her destruction. Her hands shook so violently the papers rattled. Daniel arrived minutes later, summoned by a text from Grace. He crossed the room in 2 steps, kneeling beside Emily. "I'm here," he said softly. Emily clenched the papers, her voice breaking. "He wanted us gone, Daniel. He wanted to erase us." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And now he'll face the full weight of the law." He gathered the evidence, placing it back into the envelope with steady hands. "This will go directly to the district attorney. It could add years, many years, to his sentence." Emily wiped her tears with trembling fingers. "I don't care about years. I care that he never comes near my children again." Daniel touched her hand gently. "He won't." Emily looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully, then at Noah, stirring in the bedroom, and something inside her hardened, not fear, not grief, but resolve. For the first time, she saw Lucas's fate clearly. He wouldn't just lose his freedom. He would lose power. He would lose control. He would lose the life he tried to protect through violence. Because the truth had come out loud, undeniable, irreversible, and the truth would be the weapon that finally destroyed him. Emily had already survived the worst night of her life, but the weeks that followed brought a different kind of danger, one that lurked in the shadows of procedure, paperwork, and timing. The justice system was slow. Lucas's rage was not. And although the protection order stood between them, Daniel warned her gently one afternoon, "A piece of paper doesn't stop a man like Lucas. It only gives the police grounds to arrest him after he crosses the line." That sentence echoed through her mind long after Daniel left. Emily began double-checking her locks every night. She kept her phone charged beside her bed. She arranged Lily's bassinet close enough that she could reach her in seconds. Sometimes, when a truck backfired outside or a neighbor slammed a door, her heart seized, convinced Lucas had found her. Then came the day she nearly ran into him. It was a Tuesday morning in early spring. Emily bundled Lily into her carrier and guided Noah down the stairs of the apartment building, planning to walk to the small corner market 2 blocks away. The sky was pale blue, the breeze cool, and for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful enough to breathe without tension. She had just stepped onto the sidewalk when a black sedan rolled slowly around the corner. Her blood turned cold. Lucas had always driven a black sedan. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She grabbed Noah's hand tightly and pressed forward, trying to stay calm. "Keep walking, baby," she whispered, pushing the stroller faster. The sedan slowed. Her chest constricted. The world blurred around the edges. Every muscle in her body screamed, "Run." She ducked quickly into the nearest shop, a small bookstore with foggy windows and the scent of old paper. She kept her eyes glued to the glass as the sedan crawled past. Only when the car turned, the corner did her knees finally weaken. She sagged against a bookshelf, clutching the stroller handle with shaking hands. A kindly older woman who worked there hurried over. "Sweetheart, are you all right?" Emily nodded too quickly. "Yes, I just needed a moment." The woman's eyes softened. "You take all the moments you need." Emily stayed in the bookstore for nearly 20 minutes, pretending to browse while her heart settled. By the time she stepped back outside, the sedan was gone, but the fear wasn't. That afternoon, she called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. "Emily, what's wrong?" She told him what happened, voice trembling despite her effort to stay composed. Daniel's tone shifted instantly, steadier, sharper. "You did the right thing. Good instincts. But Emily, listen to me carefully. You can't walk alone with the children until I talk to the detective. If Lucas is tailing your neighborhood, it's a violation of the order." Emily sat on the edge of her bed, Lily in her arms. "I don't know if it was him," she whispered. "What if I'm overreacting?" "You're not overreacting," Daniel replied. "Survivors are rarely wrong about danger." He came over that evening. He installed a new deadbolt on her door, checked the building's security cameras, and spoke with her landlord about updating the intercom system. Noah watched with wide eyes while Daniel worked, as if sensing something important was happening. As Daniel tightened the last screw, Emily whispered, "I don't want to live afraid forever." "You won't," he said gently. "But staying cautious right now isn't fear, it's wisdom." Later that night, as Emily rocked Lily to sleep, she felt a deep heaviness settle in her chest. She had escaped Lucas, physically, legally, and emotionally. But danger had a way of lingering until justice fully snapped shut around a man like him. She looked down at her daughter's peaceful face and whispered, "I won't let him touch you. Not ever." She didn't know it yet, but that near encounter would spark a chain of events, new evidence, new witnesses, and a crucial mistake on Lucas's part that would soon tighten the noose around his freedom. Because escape wasn't just a moment. It was a battle still being fought, and one she intended to win. The weeks after the near encounter with the black sedan changed something in Emily. Fear was still there, yes, pulsing under her ribs like a second heartbeat, but now it sat beside something stronger, determination. She had lived in the shadows of Lucas's anger for too long. She wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. Her healing deepened in ways she didn't expect. It began with the smallest act, stepping outside again. The next morning, after barely sleeping, Emily stood at the apartment window watching cars pass below. For a moment she considered canceling everything on her calendar. Staying inside felt safer. But then she looked at Noah stacking his colorful blocks and Lily cooing in her bassinet, and she remembered what Grace had told her weeks before. Your world can't shrink to fear. Your children need to see the world as safe, even before you feel it is. So Emily dressed Noah warmly, wrapped Lily in a soft blanket, and took a slow, cautious walk around the block. The air was cool, the sky pale with spring sunlight. Her steps were tentative at first, but with every breath she took, her confidence grew. No black sedan appeared, no shadow followed her. She walked past the small cafe on the corner, past the playground, past the line of tulips pushing up through the soil near the curb. Ordinary life surrounded her, reminding her she belonged to it. By the time she returned home, her heart felt lighter. Later that week, her old employer sent more assignments. Balancing accounting reports while soothing a newborn wasn't easy, but Emily rediscovered a part of herself that had been buried under years of marriage. She had always been good with numbers, organized, precise, calm under pressure. Lucas had once praised her for it before he turned that praise into resentment. Now, she felt the old confidence returning. One evening, while cross-checking invoices on her laptop, she heard Noah giggle wildly in the living room. Daniel sat on the rug with him, pretending to be a dinosaur, crawling around while Noah shrieked with joy. The sight rooted Emily to the spot. It was simple, gentle, and full of the kind of love she'd rarely seen between a man and her children. Daniel looked up, slightly out of breath. "Don't judge my dinosaur skills. I'm out of practice." Emily laughed, an honest, unguarded laugh she hadn't heard from herself in years. "You're doing better than me." Later, after putting Noah to bed, they stood in the quiet kitchen sipping tea. Daniel leaned against the counter, studying her with a thoughtful expression. "You seem different this week," he said. Emily pressed her warm mug between her palms. "Different how?" "Stronger," he said simply. "Like you're not just surviving. You're rebuilding." She looked down, a shy smile forming. "I'm trying. Some days I feel brave. Other days, it's like one memory can ruin everything." "That's healing," he said. "It's not straight, it's not clean, but you're doing it." He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't try to move closer. He gave her space, something she wasn't used to receiving from any man. Another part of her rebuild came from therapy sessions with Marcy. Every Monday afternoon, Marcy came to the apartment with soft questions and patient listening. At first, Emily spoke timidly, tripping over her truths. But gradually, she voiced things she had never dared say aloud. "I forgot who I was," she confessed one day. Marcy nodded gently. "You didn't forget. You were pushed into a corner too small to stand in. Now you're stepping back into your own space." Emily felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I want my kids to grow up knowing love isn't supposed to hurt." "They will," Marcy promised, "because you're teaching them." Weeks passed, and each day Emily felt her spine straighten a little more, her voice steady a little longer, her fears loosen their grip. She began cooking again, simple meals that filled the apartment with warm scents. She played music Noah liked. She rocked Lily until her eyelids fluttered. She laughed more, breathed more, existed more. Healing wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, it didn't announce itself. It was quiet, steady, and strong, and with every passing day, Emily felt herself growing into the woman she always hoped to be, the woman Lucas never allowed her to become. The woman who would soon face him one last time, and win. The morning of the custody hearing arrived with a gray sky hanging low over Manhattan, the kind that made the entire city feel heavy. Emily woke before dawn, her nerves buzzing beneath her skin. Lily slept curled against her chest, and Noah snored softly in the crib Daniel had built for him. For a moment, she just watched her children breathe. They were the reason she was walking into a courtroom today. They were the reason she had survived everything Lucas tried to break. At 7:30 a.m., Daniel knocked gently on her door. Emily opened it, dressed in a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back neatly. She looked nervous but steady. Daniel's voice softened. "Ready?" "No," she whispered honestly, "but I'm going anyway." He gave a small nod. That's what strength is. They left the children with Marcy, who had insisted on staying the entire day. Noah clung to Emily's leg before she left, and Lily reached her tiny hands toward her mother. Emily kissed both their foreheads. "Mommy's coming home," she promised. Always. The courthouse felt colder than she expected. Tall ceilings, marble floors, voices echoing through long hallways. Emily's heart raced with every step they took toward the family courtroom door. Lucas would be inside, the man who pushed her, the man who tried to erase her. But today, for the first time, she wasn't walking toward him as his victim. She was walking toward him as a woman with the truth behind her. When the courtroom doors opened, Emily froze. Lucas was already seated at the defense table, wearing a suit that didn't fit as sharply as it once had. His hair was overgrown, his face tense. There was no Vanessa, no mother to defend him, no colleagues from Manhattan to polish his ego. He sat alone, hands clenched, jaw tight. He looked nothing like the overpowering figure who once made her knees shake. He looked small. Emily inhaled slowly and walked inside. Lucas's eyes snapped to her, flickering with something ugly anger mixed with disbelief. As she took her seat beside Daniel, Lucas leaned toward his attorney and whispered furiously. But Emily didn't look away this time. She met his stare with calm, steady eyes. It rattled him. The judge entered. Court is now in session. The hearing began with formal questions: financial stability, living conditions, medical records. Emily answered each one clearly, her voice trembling only once when discussing Noah's fall. Daniel placed a reassuring hand near her elbow, close enough to ground her, far enough to respect her space. Then came the evidence. Daniel stood, adjusting his tie slightly. "Your Honor, we'd like to submit additional documentation collected in the ongoing investigation." He presented the hospital photographs of Emily's bruises, the medical report on Noah's fractured arm, the staircase camera footage showing Lucas's aggressive movement, and finally, the text messages between Lucas and Vanessa. The courtroom went silent. Lucas's face drained as the judge read the texts aloud. "Handle it before the baby ties you forever. It'll look like an accident." Emily felt her stomach twist hearing the words again, but she kept her gaze steady. Lucas's attorney tried to object, but the judge cut him off sharply. "This is highly relevant." Lucas finally burst, slamming his fist on the table. "She's lying. They're manipulating everything. She's turning people against me." The judge's eyes hardened. "One more outburst, Mr. Miller, and I'll have you removed." Emily's heart pounded, but for the first time, she saw Lucas's rage for what it truly was: not power, not strength, but desperation. A cornered man losing control. When the judge finally announced the ruling, the room felt frozen. Full temporary custody is awarded to Emily Carter. Mr. Miller is barred from any visitation until further notice. A criminal trial will proceed next month. Emily exhaled shakily. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. Lucas lunged to stand, pointing at her. "You think you've won?" "You think?" Security stepped in, gripping his arms before he could get closer. Emily didn't flinch. She stood, collected her bag, and walked past him. For a brief second, Lucas looked at her, truly looked at her. And in his eyes, she saw fear, not dominance, fear of losing everything he once controlled. Emily didn't speak. She didn't need to. As she stepped out of the courtroom, Daniel fell into step beside her. "You did it," he said quietly. Emily shook her head, tears filling her eyes, not of sadness, but release. "No," she whispered. "We did." Outside, the sky began to clear, and for the first time, Emily felt the future opening instead of collapsing. Lucas's mother, Margaret Miller, had always been a quiet shadow in the background of Emily's marriage, polite, distant, and strangely loyal to her son, in a way that felt more like blindness than love. She lived only a few blocks from Lucas, and had always seemed to carry an unspoken belief that Emily wasn't good enough for him. But she had never been openly cruel, not like Lucas. Yet when the courtroom ruling spread through their social circle, Margaret's controlled silence cracked. It began with a phone call. A sharp rung on Emily's phone as she sat rocking Lily in the late afternoon Sunday. The number was unfamiliar, but something about the area code made her stomach tighten. "Hello?" Emily answered cautiously. A breath. Then Margaret's tense voice. "Emily, we need to talk." Emily stiffened. She hadn't heard that voice since the night of the fall, the night Margaret stood in the hospital hallway, whispering urgently to Lucas about keeping the story straight. "What do you want?" Emily asked. "I want my son back." Margaret's voice shook with restrained anger. "You're ruining his life. You and that lawyer of yours." Emily's heartbeat thudded painfully. "Lucas ruined his own life," she replied quietly. "I just survived it." A brittle silence. Then Margaret whispered sharply, "You think I don't know what you're doing? You think I'll let you destroy him? He didn't mean for any of this to happen." Emily swallowed hard. "You saw the injuries. You heard him yelling, and you told him to keep lying." Margaret's breath hitched, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she spat out, "Families protect each other." Emily's voice trembled, but she stood her ground. "Mine didn't. Not until I protected it myself." That sentence seemed to cut deeper than anything. Margaret hung up abruptly. Emily sat still for a long moment, brushing her fingers through Lily's soft hair. She wasn't shaken, but she wasn't relieved either. Margaret wasn't a violent woman, but she was desperate. Desperate people made reckless choices, and Margaret was about to make hers. 2 days later, Daniel arrived earlier than usual. His knock was urgent. Emily opened the door, instantly reading the tension in his face. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside. Emily felt her throat tighten. "What happened?" Daniel set a file on the kitchen counter. "Detective Ramirez forwarded this to me. It's about Margaret." Emily's fingers grazed the folder. She inhaled deeply before opening it. Inside were printed screenshots, emails Margaret had sent to Lucas's defense attorney, trying to influence witnesses, suggesting ways to frame Emily's injuries as postpartum clumsiness. There were also phone logs, repeated calls to the hospital administration, in which she attempted to pressure staff into softening the language in the reports. And the most damning of all, a police statement from Mr. Walter, the neighbor, revealing that Margaret had offered him cash to delete the security footage showing Lucas's aggression. Emily felt sick. "She tried to erase everything," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "It's obstruction of justice, Emily. They're adding it to the investigation." Emily pressed a hand over her mouth, overwhelmed, not with fear this time, but with a crushing mixture of sadness and disbelief. Margaret had always struck her as cold, judgmental, but she never imagined the woman would go this far. Daniel sat beside her. "Emily, this isn't your fault. Margaret chose this." "But she's his mother," Emily said quietly. "She's not supposed to protect a monster." Daniel looked at her gently. "Some parents would rather drown in denial than face the truth about their children." Emily let out a long, shaky breath. "What will happen to her?" "She'll face charges, maybe probation, maybe more, depending on the judge." He paused. "But she won't be able to interfere anymore. You're safe." Emily looked down at Lily sleeping peacefully in her arms and thought of Noah coloring at the coffee table. She thought of the fall, the hospital, the panic, and the long chain of lies Margaret tried so desperately to preserve. She had allowed Lucas to believe he was untouchable. She had enabled him, shielded him, covered for him. And now, the protection she used like armor had become her downfall. Emily exhaled slowly. "It ends with them," she whispered. "This cycle, it ends with them." Daniel nodded. "And you're the one who broke it." Emily held her daughter close, her heart steady and strong. Lucas would lose his freedom. Margaret would lose her lies. But Emily would never lose herself again. The night Lily was born began like any other, quiet, soft, and peaceful. Emily was folding Noah's pajamas while he played beside her, when a sudden tightening in her belly stopped her breath. It wasn't like the usual Braxton Hicks. This was sharper, deeper, real. She placed a hand on her stomach and inhaled slowly, trying to steady herself. "Are you okay, Mama?" Noah asked, his little voice full of concern. Emily smiled reassuringly, though her pulse quickened. "I'm okay, baby. Mommy just needs to sit for a minute." But the contractions grew stronger, closer, faster. She grabbed her phone with trembling hands and called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. "Emily? What's wrong?" "It's time," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The baby. She's coming. I'm on my way. Don't move. Keep Noah close." Within minutes, he arrived, breathless, hair wind-blown as if he'd sprinted from his car. He scooped Noah into his arms and helped Emily walk carefully down the stairs. Every step felt like a mountain. Her body shook with the pressure of labor, but fear pulsed beneath the pain. What if something went wrong? What if the stress from the fall caused complications? What if the baby wasn't okay? Daniel seated her in the back of his car, helped buckle Noah into his seat, and then raced toward the hospital. Streetlights streaked past the windows as Emily breathed through each contraction, gripping the door handle so hard her knuckles whitened. "You're doing great," Daniel said gently. "Just breathe. I'm right here." His voice steadied her like an anchor. At the hospital, nurses rushed in with a wheelchair. Emily clung to Daniel's hand until they had to separate for the delivery room. "Please stay," she whispered. "I'll be right outside," he promised. "I'm not going anywhere." Labor was long. The hours blurred. Pain came in waves that felt like fire tearing through her spine. Nurses murmured encouragement. Machines beeped steadily. Emily cried, screamed, pushed all while memories of the fall flashed in her mind. The stairs, the impact, Noah's cry, Lucas's face, the fear of losing her unborn baby. But then, a small cry pierced the room. A fragile, beautiful cry. "Emily," a nurse whispered, smiling. "She's here." Relief shattered through her. They placed the tiny newborn on her chest, pink cheeks, curled fists, soft breaths. Emily sobbed, her tears falling onto Lily's warm skin. "You're safe," she whispered. "You're here. You're safe." Later, when the chaos calmed and Lily slept tucked against her, the door opened softly. Daniel stepped inside, holding a small stuffed bunny he'd bought from the hospital gift shop. "She's beautiful," he said quietly, his eyes gentle. Emily nodded, exhaustion weighing her body but not her heart. "She's perfect. How are you feeling?" he asked, pulling a chair beside her bed. "Tired," she said honestly, "but lighter, like something finally opened." Daniel rested his arms on his knees, his voice a whisper. "You did this. You brought her into the world. After everything you've been through, Emily, you're the strongest person I know." Her heart swelled at the sincerity in his voice. No pressure, no demands, just truth. She glanced at the stuffed bunny and smiled softly. "Is that for Lily?" Daniel blushed. "I figured every new baby should have something soft waiting for them." Emily laughed quietly. "Thank you for everything." He shook his head. "You don't have to thank me." But she placed her hand gently on his. "I do. Because you've been here. Every step." He didn't move, didn't push, didn't let his emotions rush ahead of hers. He simply turned his hand and held hers with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. In that quiet hospital room, with Lily sleeping and the world settling around them, Emily felt something blossoming inside her, not fear, not worry, but the fragile beginning of love. Safe love, steady love, love that didn't hurt. And as she rested her head against the pillow, watching Daniel hold Lily with unshakable gentleness, she realized her life wasn't just healing, it was becoming whole again. The day of Margaret Miller's funeral arrived with a bitter chill that settled deep into the bones of everyone who stepped outside. Gray clouds hung low over New Jersey, turning the sky into a sheet of cold steel. Emily didn't plan to attend, not because she hated Margaret, but because she had enough wounds of her own to carry. But Daniel said gently, "Closure comes in strange forms. Sometimes it's standing where your past collapses." So she went. She left Lily with Marcy, bundled Noah in a warm jacket, and rode with Daniel to the funeral home, a somber brick building with tall white columns and a wrought iron gate. As they approached, Emily felt her stomach twist. It wasn't the funeral that unsettled her. It was the knowledge that Lucas would be there. And he was. He stood near the entrance, dressed in a wrinkled black suit that looked borrowed. His face was gaunt, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped not out of grief, but exhaustion. Prison time, court hearings, social isolation, financial ruin, everything had carved him into a man she barely recognized. When Lucas saw Emily step out of the car, something snapped inside him. He stepped forward quickly, almost tripping over the uneven pavement. Two officers assigned to monitor him moved subtly into position. Lucas didn't care. His eyes locked on Emily like she was the only thing left in his collapsing world. "Emily," he croaked, voice hoarse. "Please, please don't go inside without talking to me." Emily held Noah's hand and steadied her breath. "There's nothing left to talk about." Lucas shook his head violently. "You don't understand. Everything's falling apart. My mom, my job, everything." His voice cracked, but there was no sincerity in it, only desperation. "I need my family. I need you." He took one more step before the officers blocked him. "Back up, Mr. Miller," one warned. Lucas ignored them. His knees buckled, and he dropped onto the cold pavement with a thud. He actually knelt, right there, in front of the funeral home, in front of guests, in front of neighbors, in front of the world he once tried so hard to impress. "Emily," he begged, hands clasped, eyes wet. "Please, I'm sorry. I'll change. I'll do anything. Just tell them to drop the charges. Tell them I'm not a monster." Emily's heart pounded, but not with fear. With clarity. "No," she said softly. Lucas's face twisted. "You can't do this. You're the mother of my children." Emily stepped forward just enough for him to hear her clearly. "I'm the mother of children you almost killed," she said, voice steady as stone, "and they will never be near you again." A murmur rippled through the gathered crowd. Some looked away. Others stared openly. Margaret's friends whispered behind gloved hands. But no one defended Lucas. No one, because now everyone knew. Lucas's breathing grew ragged. The officers moved in as his desperation spilled into panic. He lunged, not at Emily, but toward Noah. That was enough. "Step back now," the officer barked, grabbing him by the arm. Lucas struggled, shouting, "Just let me talk to my son. He's my son." Noah whimpered, stepping behind Emily. Daniel moved protectively closer. The officers tightened their grip. "Lucas Miller, you are under arrest for violating the protective order and attempting contact with a protected minor." Handcuffs clicked. Lucas's eyes widened in horror. "No, please, Emily. Tell them. Tell them I didn't mean—" "You did mean it," Emily said quietly. "You meant all of it." As the officers led him toward the squad car, Lucas's shouts turned into broken pleas, but Emily didn't falter. She held Noah against her chest, heart steady. A funeral attendee whispered, "That poor woman. She survived him." Another murmured, "She's stronger than all of them." Daniel rested a gentle hand on Emily's back. "You okay?" Emily nodded slowly. "For the first time?" "Yes. I really am." She walked through the funeral home doors not to grieve Margaret, not to relive the past, but to prove something to herself. She no longer feared the man who once ruled her life, and she would never fear him again. In the weeks after the funeral, a strange, settling quiet wrapped itself around Emily's world. Not the suffocating silence she once lived in, the kind where she waited for footsteps, slammed doors, or the sound of Lucas's anger, but a peaceful quiet, a healing quiet, a quiet that meant her life was finally her own. Lucas remained in custody after his arrest at the funeral. The judge, tired of his repeated violations and aggressive behavior, set strict conditions. His criminal trial came quickly. The prosecution presented everything: the camera footage, the hospital records, the threatening texts, and the messages between him and Vanessa. Even the emails Margaret had sent on his behalf were submitted. Piece by piece, the case showed the truth. Lucas hadn't lost control on the night of the fall. He had planned it. The courtroom was full, the day of sentencing. Emily sat in the front row beside Daniel, Noah tucked safely in daycare, Lily sleeping in her stroller. This wasn't fear anymore. This was closure. Lucas stood before the judge. No suit this time, just a county-issued jumpsuit that hung awkwardly on his once proud frame. His shoulders slumped. His eyes, once cold and intimidating, were tired and empty. "Lucas Miller," the judge said, voice firm and steady, "you are hereby sentenced to 14 years in state prison for attempted homicide, child endangerment, and repeated violations of protective orders." A hush fell through the courtroom. Emily didn't smile. She didn't need to. Justice wasn't supposed to feel sweet. It was supposed to feel right. Lucas turned once, searching the room for someone to save him, his mother, Vanessa, anyone. But there was no one left. Everyone he once controlled had walked away, and the woman he tried to destroy now stood stronger than ever. When the officers led him out, Lucas whispered harshly, "Emily, please." But the judge cut in sharply. "Mr. Miller, you are ordered not to speak to her." It was over. Truly over. Life after the trial didn't become perfect magically, but it became whole. Real. Hers. Emily moved into a slightly bigger apartment in Brooklyn, a 2-bedroom place with sunlight that poured across the hardwood floors in the mornings. She painted the walls soft yellow, hung pictures of the kids, and placed a potted plant by the window, a small symbol that things could grow again. She continued working with her old accounting firm, eventually taking on more hours and larger clients. Her confidence returned like a tide, slow at first, then steady, then powerful. When she balanced financial reports late at night, she sometimes caught herself smiling. She had thought she lost this part of herself, but it had only been buried beneath fear. Noah thrived. His cast was gone. His laughter filled the apartment in ways that felt like music. Lily grew brighter each day, curious, strong, safe, and Daniel stayed. Not as a savior, not as a replacement, but as a partner whose gentleness never demanded anything from her. He came by with groceries, cooked dinner on busy nights, helped Noah build pillow forts, walked Lily to sleep on evenings when Emily was exhausted. Slowly, so slowly, Emily barely noticed at first, the lines between friendship and love blurred. One evening, after a long day of work and parenting, they sat on her couch watching Noah play with a toy truck. Lily slept curled on Emily's shoulder. Daniel looked at her with that soft, careful tenderness he always carried. "You know," he said quietly, "I think you're the bravest person I've ever met." Emily's eyes warmed. "I'm just trying to live," she whispered. He shook his head. "You're doing more than that. You're building something beautiful." She looked at her children, then at him. A gentle, blooming truth settled into her heart. "It feels beautiful," she said. Daniel reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and took her hand. She didn't pull away. For the first time in her adult life, she felt loved without fear, protected without control, cherished without pain. And when Daniel leaned his forehead gently against hers, Emily exhaled a breath she didn't realize she had been holding for years. The past no longer owned her. The future didn't scare her. She had risen from the darkest place a woman could stand and built a life filled with light. Because no matter how hard her story began, Emily refused to let it end in darkness. She chose strength. She chose freedom. She chose love. And she won. And that's it. Our story finally comes to a close. But if you're still here, listening until this very last moment, it means something in Emily's journey touched your heart in a real, honest way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength. Maybe it reminded you of someone you love. Or maybe it simply whispered a truth you already knew deep inside. No matter how dark life gets, there is always a path back to the light. Emily's story teaches us that healing is not instant, and courage is often quiet. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The obstacle is the way." Every pain we survive becomes the very force that helps us rise again. Like Emily, we all have moments where we feel pushed to the edge. But what matters is the step we take afterward. So if today feels heavy, or if you're carrying things no one else can see, remember this. You are stronger than the worst moment you've lived. You deserve safety, respect, and peace. And you have the power to rebuild, one small choice at a time. If this story touched you, even just a little, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more healing stories, more strength, and more hope to people who might need it right now. We're here with you, always.